Welcome to another video, and in today's video we'll be talking on everything data structures and algorithms. In the previous video we talked about the different program structure in JavaScript. We talked about control structures, we talked about the variables, we talked about short circuiting in logical operators, things like that. And in today's video, we will be talking more about the different data structures that exist in JavaScript and in other programming languages as well. And for this particular video, we'll be focusing on arrays. That's right, arrays. And yeah, let's dive in. So in JavaScript, we have a data structure called array, and the array is the most popular and the most widely used data structures in JavaScript as far as I'm concerned. And arrays are basically, they are data structures that can be used to hold sequences of data, and the data can include things like strings to numbers, to even arrays as well, and objects. Arrays are a good way to store values in sequences. And to declare an array, you do something like const array equals to square brackets open, square brackets closed. So basically in JavaScript, to identify an array, you use square brackets. That is the notation for arrays. And like I mentioned earlier, arrays can be used to store values. And the values can be of any data type. It can be a string, it can be a number, it can be an array, it can be an object, which is something we'll still discuss in the next video. It can be either string, number, object, an array, and all of that. It can also be like a function as well. You can as well store a function. You can as well store a function. Let's say we can as well store a function. And let's try. So basically, like I mentioned earlier, an array stores your data in sequences. And in arrays, there are things called properties, and there are things called methods. So arrays have what they call a property and a method. And property is basically from the word property. It means it's more or less like a feature or an extended functionality that an array exposes or an array provides. So things like length, the length of an array. The length of an array is another data that an array exposes. And for the length, you can classify the length of an array as a property. So anything that comes after a dot notation that is not a function is a property. Anything that comes after the dot notation that is not a method is a property. So for example, let's say we have the array notation, and then we put the dot sign. We could see the different properties that an array exposes. So you can see the length property. You can see all these are practically methods that it exposes. So this is a list of methods and properties that an array exposes. So you can see the keys method, you can see the map method, you can see the pop method as well, you can see the reduce and the rest of them. So basically the length is a property of an array. So for example, let's say you want to get the length of this particular array, we do array dot length. So array dot length gives you 5. It tells you that, oh, we have 5 items in this array, and that is how you get a property. And like I mentioned earlier, it also contains methods. So arrays have their specific method, and it depends on the language. So for example, Python has some methods that arrays in JavaScript doesn't have, but in this course we are focusing more on JavaScript. So some of the methods that the JavaScript exposes are methods like we saw in the previous screens. Could see things like concat, could see constructor, could see the entries, could see the every method, could see the fill method, could see the filter method, the find method, find index method, all of this. So basically these are all of the methods that are associated with an array, and these methods have their own specific functions. They all do a specific thing. So for example, let's see the filter method. The filter method filters an array. Filters a specific keyword from an array. It filters a specific data from an array. The find method allows you to find a particular item in an array. Same with the find index, find last index. So each of the methods have their own specific function that they carry about. And one important thing to note as well before we use some of these methods and properties is for you to access any of this item in the array, we use the square bracket as well. So to get an item from an array, you first of all you call the array and you put your opening and closing square brackets, and then you put your index. So arrays basically gets values or identifies items in arrays using their indexes. So arrays are identified with a unique number, which is called the index. So basically, because an arrays are linear, they are like for example, this particular array is one-dimensional. So basically what it means is that this item has an index of 1, which is like the location or the address where it is stored. So this item has an index of 0, not 1. Sorry, my bad. So it has an index of 0 because it's the first item on the array. And the second one has an index of 1, the third has an index of 2, the fourth has an index of 3, and the fifth item has an index of 4. So basically, to access them, you use the index. And indexes in arrays are basically number values. They are number values. So let's say we want to access the second item in the array, and would do this. So to access the second item in the array, let's call the array and let's put the 1 index. And you can see it returns the second item in the array. And let's get the last item, which is the fifth item, using the for index. And as you can see, it returns the function, the arrow function, which is the fourth the fourth index in the array. And yeah, that's that. Then let's use some of the array methods and see how they work. So let's create a dummy array where we can add anything, and for this array, let's add a string, and let's call the string cars. So to add an item to an array after you've instantiated, that's after you've declared your array, to add an item to this array, we use a method called push. So arrays have a method called push. So we do dummy array.push and we add the string cars. And if we decide to console.log the array, you should see that it now contains the cars string. And you can as well go ahead to add even more items. So let's copy this. So let's paste this. Let's add houses. And if you console.log, it shows that it has 2 items in the array. Same applies to numbers as well. Let's remove this, and that gives you 1. So yeah, because we just pushed a number. And if you noticed, because at each point in time we create a new array and then push, what it means is that we end up losing some of this data that we've previously pushed, and that is fine. And the reason, like I mentioned, the reason why it is fine is that at each point in time we create a new array and then we'll push a new data to it. So just in case you're wondering how we had cars here and then we had cars and houses and then all of a sudden we had just one, that is basically what happens. And yeah, you can feel free to play around with different methods that an array provides. There are a couple of them, but for this video we used just the push method. You can feel free to use the pop and the rest of them. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.